So we're not done yet. We have about 15 minutes left. I'm going to ask Collin to come up here, out here, wherever he is. Where's Collin? Maybe he's back in children. No, there's no children's church today. Is Collin here? Here he is. Come on. I'll get one right here. I have letter F here, Bruce. So, one of the funny things is, as Collin has come, as he has been called a lot of different names pronouncing what we have up here on the screen. So we're going to do it together. His first name is Collin, so say, hi, Collin.
Hi, Collin.
His last name is Nemec, so say, hi, Mr. Nemec. We got it? We got it. All right, great. So I just want to ask him some questions, basic questions, for you to get to know him a little bit more this morning, his heart, where he found Jesus, and what he looks for in the future. So the first one on the screen is just, where did you grow up?
Well,
let's turn it on.
is it not on? I thought, okay, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Here, there we go. Okay. Well, I'm from O'Neill, Nebraska, so middle of nowhere, only town there. If you know where Grand Island is, it's about 2 hours directly north of there. So.
And what was your home life growing up?
I had really strong and hardworking parents, but they had both kind of left the church due to a lot of personal conflicts. You know, my dad's first wife had died when my siblings were in late high school, so he kind of developed into an alcoholic, and so that had a lot of, I guess, drive for me to be different, you know. And so it was, like I said, I had really good parents, but they weren't faith parents. And so, you know, I needed something else. I had watched, you know, my brother had used a lot of drugs while he was in high school, and I noticed that, you know, I didn't want to do that. And so my neighbor, this was actually a future question, but we'll just get through. My neighbor lady asked if she could take me to church when I was like 3, so I started going then. And, you know, I guess I was notorious in high school. I actually was talking to the pastor, and I made a comment, not knowing that this would become my identity, but I said, well, Pastor Jim, I think I'm at church more often than you are. And so that kind of defines, you know, how I was when I was younger. I didn't, as much as I loved home, I didn't want to go home. So I went to church.
Tell everybody the age of your siblings.
Yeah, so my youngest brother is 21 years and 21 days older than me. So, and then I have a brother that's 6 months older than him. And then I have a sister that is 2 years older than my youngest brother, and a sister that's 6 months older than her. So I have nieces, or a niece that's older than me, and a nephew that was 3 months younger than me. So my mom and my sister were pregnant at the same time.
Wow. Okay. When did you trust Jesus as your Savior? Tell us what was going on with that.
Yeah, well, this wasn't like an individual moment for me. This was kind of a lot of things adding up to that. The kind of breakthrough moment was I was actually, there's a little store called Hastings, if you guys heard of it, and they would sell comic books and skateboards and books and CDs. And I'd go on my computer and I'd find, you know, Christian CDs and stuff like that, because I found out Christian music was a thing. You know, my dad had raised me on like 80s stuff and like CCR, you know. But so I found out that was a thing. I bought a CD that I don't know how it ended up there, but it was there, and it's by this band called This Beautiful Republic, and it just spoke to me in a totally different way. So I was about 12 when that happened, and it really encouraged me to take faith as a serious thing. And so from there, I just kind of decided, you know, you talk about reset. I kind of decided I wanted to be different, you know, like not just in thought, but in action. And so that's kind of when I guess my eyes were open and I took it more seriously.
Great. So where did you go to college, and what did you major in?
So I attended University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and I majored in biochemistry.
And that's right, fitting right into his new job, huh? What made you pick that, and what did you learn in your college experience?
So, well, I planned to attend Evangel University, but we didn't have the funds for that. And so, frantically looking, I had denied the request from West Point. And, and so, we were frantically looking for what I was going to do, and my mom talked to the guidance counselor and found out I had full tuition at UNL. So that was the route I took, and, there were some trying times involved with that. My first week of college, my mom died, and so it was convenient that I was close. And that relationship that I didn't have with my father for most of my life, I got to develop through that. And so, looking back at the big picture now, all of the going to UNL ended up being a blessing, and even through biochemistry. A lot of why I was interested in that was I was good at biology and chemistry. But I always, my dad was a pretty logistical guy, and so I always wanted to prove faith, with science. And having gone through 4 years of college, I found I can't really do that. But that strengthened my faith because it says that, every time I try to do something and try to understand some of those things that aren't really necessary for me to understand, I just got to take a step back and just say, I trust you, God, and leave it at that. So, yeah.
Okay. And so maybe one of the questions I didn't put down, but I'd like you to talk about, tell me about what were your prayers like when you first were saved? What would you pray for, and how has God answered some of those in your life?
Right. Well, when I was a kid, I guess back to church family, and this will come back later. But a lot of the reasons I liked being at church so much was I could walk in there and people, they'd hug you and they'd, get to know you, and you'd know everybody by name. I knew where everybody in my church lived. I knew where the keys to half their houses were. Like we were family, and I always wanted that at home. And so as a kid, it was mostly older people, but they always told me that you could be the one to change your family. You could be the difference maker. And so when this was even before I was, I guess, defined as saved, I had started to pray that I would see two things occur in my life. And so the first was that my dad would quit drinking, and the second is that my parents would start coming to church with me. And they started coming sooner than before my dad quit drinking, because I'd started singing at church and playing drums and guitar and stuff, so I was involved, so they came to kind of watch that. But it was a couple months before I graduated my senior year, my dad and I kind of had a fallout, and we didn't talk for a while, but it was after that he quit drinking. And so we had an amazing summer after my graduation where my parents actively attended church, and I think it was at that point that they became faithers again. Yep. So those were my two primary prayers, and having had those answered, over lots of years and lots of fights, definitely could have been easier if I would have been a little less stubborn. But over all of that, I saw those two things, come to fruition, and that was just an amazing blessing,
Good. What kind of roles have you played in church, or have you served in?
So, ever since I was little, at church, at home, we were a smaller church, but we were kind of expected to serve. And it wasn't just expected, it was just because everybody else did, and you saw how it enhanced their lives. And so, even when I was 6 or 7, I'd be handing out bulletins or doing stuff like that. And that was just something that we did. And so as I got older and as I got more involved with church around that same age as 12, I got on the worship team, and I would do like a hospitality team kind of thing. And then as I got through high school, I started to help with some of the, I guess it'd be kind of children's church ministries kind of things, just because we didn't have a whole lot of leaders, and I was pretty good with Bible knowledge, so that's where I started. And through college, I attended a church plant in Dawes Middle School in Lincoln called Mercy City, and it was there that over 4 years, I ended up being on the outreach team, worship team, youth team, and production team. So I had to keep my tradition of being in church more than the pastor. But
are you still going to try to do that?
I don't know. I think the only time I can keep up with you is when your foot's hurting you.
Okay. What has God taught you about serving Him?
Mostly patience. I get a little frustrated if I don't get something perfect or or done the way I'd like it done. So I think that's one of the things I've had to do is just really step back and say, like, how can I learn to serve better in the future? And on the, another aspect of that is how can I make sure my heart's right when I'm serving? That's something that I didn't really see it at home, but I saw at other churches that I would go to, when I was trying to find a home church in Lincoln, is that people would be serving, but, we could walk in a church and not talk to anybody and walk out, and they would have never known we were there. And so I think that says something about the hearts of the people serving.
Yep.
So.
Great. And why did you come to Christ Community Church?
Well, this is always the toughest because a lot of people think it's out of like desperation or something like that. That's not why, to backtrack, I had met Grant in college. I played a little bit in his band, so that's how I had a connection. And after talking with Pastor Dan and kind of hearing his vision, I decided to come down here and I checked it out. And I've been to very few churches that actually feel like church at home. And, I could walk in here and all the people introducing each other or introducing themselves to me just my first week when I was just kind of sitting back at one of the tables was amazing. And hearing about all the ministries. And there's a lot of okay churches out there. There's a lot of kind of mushy churches that kind of water down the gospel. And there's a lot of churches that, aren't really spirit-filled. But when you find one of those and you have an opportunity to go there and be a part of it, that's just something I couldn't say no to.
Great. And what has God been teaching you since you moved here? 6 weeks? About 6, 7 weeks?
Something like
yeah.
that.
Okay.
Something like
yeah.
that.
Besides that you don't like to scoop snow.
I don't mind scooping snow.
Okay.
It's just in abundance. Don't try to keep up with Pastor Dan because you can't. That's one of the things I've learned. A lot of it's just patience and understanding that, I can plant as many seeds as I want, in ministry, and this is kind of an allegory for a lot of things in life. You can plant all these seeds, but in spiritual terms, it's God that makes them grow, and so that's something that I've really learning, under you and Pastor Jack and Pastor Sam is to, especially as Awana is starting to come back up, is to just keep planting seeds and planting seeds and planting seeds, whether that's in ministry or whether that's in serving or fellowship. Plant seeds and build relationships and give it patience so that something can grow there.
Yeah, great. So what's your favorite Bible verse?
Well, I've got a couple different ones. I actually have a little plaque that is on my desk in my office, if any of you have been in there. And it's Colossians 3:23. It says, work unto the Lord. So work willingly at whatever you do, as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. And I think that's, back to a servant's heart. That was just a mentality I had growing up, was this idea of a servant's heart.
Yep.
And so as I started to try to develop that and how the Holy Spirit kind of worked through me to develop that more, it really stuck.
Good.
So.
Good. And what can we do to help you as a church, or as a church to help you to settle in?
Be patient with me and give me some grace. There's a lot of faces here, and I know probably half of the faces and probably half the names, but I can't associate the two quite yet. So be patient with me and help me to learn so that I can grow into the vision of the church and, add to that.
Great. So Collin's role is, first, he's children's pastor, okay? And so he came just as everything was winding down for the holiday season, and now we'll get that going back again. So everything from Awana, Children's Church, Vacation Bible School, Sunday School, nursery, and then he's in charge of the building. And this is a big building, okay? It entails a lot, but anytime anybody uses the building, something breaks, the buying of equipment for the building, he'll just be in charge of all of that. And so let's just give him a round of applause to let him know we're glad that he is here. And he's looking good too while he's doing it, right? So we're going to be done. I just have one more thing to say. There's a bunch of flowers up here. And usually at Christmas Eve or the last Sunday of the year, where you say those are gifts for you. And so if you would like to have one of these poinsettias, or there's some ivies up here, and I think there are 2 little ivies already spoken for. If it doesn't have a name on it already, you're welcome to come up here, and God bless you and Happy New Year.